If your Longview lease renewal just showed up and the rent went up again, you're probably asking a fair question. Should I keep renting, or is it finally smarter to buy a house? And honestly, that's a smart question to ask. Because on one hand, rent keeps going up. Every year that lease renewal shows up, and somehow the number is higher than it was before. But on the other hand, buying a house in 2026 can feel expensive. Interest rates are higher than what people got used to a few years ago. Property taxes in Texas are real. Insurance matters, maintenance matters, and when you first look at the monthly payment, it can feel intimidating. So today, I want to take the emotion out of it. I want to break down the real math of renting versus buying right here in Longview, Texas. Because the answer is not always buy, no matter what. Sometimes renting makes sense. Sometimes buying is the smarter long-term move. The key is knowing which one fits your situation. I'm Austin Moore with Austin Moore & Company Real Estate, and my goal is to help you make a smart decision based on math, timing, and your real life. Because the biggest mistake people make in the rent versus buy conversation is simple. They compare their rent payment to a mortgage payment, and then they stop there. They see $1,500 a month in rent. They see maybe $1,900 or $2,000 a month to own once you include principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And they immediately say, well, renting is cheaper. And month to month, sometimes that's true, but that is not the full picture. The real question is not just which payment is lower this month. The real question is, where is your money going over the next 5 years? When you rent, you are paying for a place to live. That has value. You get flexibility. If the AC breaks, you call the landlord. If the roof leaks, that is usually not your bill. If life changes and you need to move to Dallas, Tyler, Shreveport, or somewhere else, it is usually easier to make that move when the lease is up. So I'm not here to tell you renting is bad. Renting can absolutely be the right choice, but renting is not building ownership. It is not building equity. It is not locking in the biggest part of your housing payment. And that is where buying starts to look very different. Because when you buy a home, yes, part of your payment is a true cost. Interest is a cost. Taxes are a cost. Insurance, again, is a cost. Maintenance is a cost. But part of your payment is also paying down principal. That means part of your monthly payment is slowly becoming yours. That is equity. And over time, that becomes one of the biggest financial advantages of home ownership. Now let's be fair about the other side. Buying a home in Longview is not magically cheap. I'm not going to sit here and act like owning is always cheaper every single month. A lot of times, it is not. When you own, you have to think about the full picture. Not just principal and interest. You also need to think about property taxes, insurance, and maintenance from day one. That part matters. But here's what makes buying powerful if you're planning to stay put. With a fixed rate mortgage, the principal and interest portion of your payment stays the same. That is a huge deal. Because while rent can go up year after year, the biggest part of your mortgage payment becomes predictable. That creates stability. It also acts as a hedge against inflation over time. Your friends who are renting may get a new number every single year, but if you buy wisely, the biggest part of your payment is locked in. And the longer you stay, the more powerful that becomes. So now we get to the most important question in this whole conversation. How long are you going to stay? Because that is usually what determines whether renting or buying makes more sense. Buying comes with upfront costs. You may have inspections and appraisal, lender fees, title costs, moving expenses, and everything else that comes with closing on a home. So if you buy a house and then sell it a year later, there's a good chance renting would have been the better financial move. That is just the truth. That is why I like using a 5-year rule. If there is a good chance that you will move within the next year or two, I would be very cautious about buying just because you feel like you're supposed to. But if your job is here, your family's here, your kids are in school here, and you believe you're going to stay in Longview, Hallsville, White Oak, Spring Hill, Kilgore, or the surrounding Gregg County area for 5 years or more, buying starts to make a much stronger case. Why? Because now you have time. time to spread out the upfront costs, time to pay down your loan, time for that fixed payment to work in your favor, and time for the home to potentially appreciate while you build equity. That is when the higher upfront cost of buying can start turning into a real long-term financial advantage. Now let me hit one of the biggest myths I hear all the time. Austin, I need 20% down. That is just not true for most primary home buyers. In many cases, conventional buyers may be able to buy with around 5% down. FHA can be as low as 3.5% down. VA can be 0 down for eligible buyers. And on top of that, we specialize in helping our clients negotiate seller concessions whenever possible to help with closing costs. Some banks also have special programs that can make the upfront cash needed even lower. We recently helped a client get a 0% down conventional loan with a local bank. So before you rule yourself out, check with us first. A lot of buyers have better options than they think. The goal is not to guess. The goal is not to assume. The goal is to look at your real options, your real numbers, and your real timeline. So here's the smarter way to think about it. Ask yourself 4 questions. What am I paying for rent right now? What would a realistic monthly payment to own actually look like after principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance? How much cash would I realistically need upfront? And how long do I honestly plan to stay? If you answer those 4 questions clearly, the decision usually gets a whole lot easier. If you need flexibility, renting may be the right move. If you only plan to be in Longview for a year or 2, renting may be the right move. If buying would stretch you too thin every month, renting may be the right move. There is nothing wrong with that. But if you are tired of annual rent increase, tired of your payment going nowhere, and planning to stay in East Texas for the long haul, buying may be the smarter financial decision, especially if you are looking at a 5-year window or longer. And the key word there is may, because this is not about pressure. It is about math. It is about timeline. And it is about making the right decision for your life, not somebody else's. So if you're trying to decide whether to keep renting or buy in Longview, reach out to me and my team. We would be happy to help you look at the numbers, talk through the timeline, connect you with a trusted local lender, and help you figure out whether buying makes sense right now or whether it makes more sense to wait. Either way, you'll make the decision with clarity instead of guesswork. I'm Austin Moore with Austin Moore & Company Real Estate, and if you're thinking about buying, make sure to watch my next video on first-time homebuyer tips in Longview, Texas. I'll see you in the next one.